Ukraine has said it had shot down all 36 Iranian-made drones launched by Russia in overnight attacks, which it said probably targeted critical infrastructure and military facilities. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that it had been an uneasy night. Ukraine's Southern Command reported destroying 3 drones over the Mykolaiv Oblast and over one Odessa one, but there were no hits in those regions. Earlier, Kyiv City military administration head Serhiy Popko said that Russian forces had targeted the Ukrainian capital for the 12th time in the month of May. Founder of Russia's Wagner mercenary group, Yevgeny Prigozhin, has said he has started withdrawing its forces from the Ukrainian city of Bakhmut and transferring its positions there to regular Russian troops. Prigozhin announced the capture of Bakhmut on May the 20th after the longest and bloodiest battle of the war. In the latest video, he was seen repeatedly voicing public criticism of senior Russian defense officials. He said the forces will be ready to return to Bakhmut if the regular army was unable to manage the situation. Meanwhile, the Russian commander of a militia that conducted a raid on the Russian border region this week said his group will soon launch more incursions into the Russian territory. The leader, who described himself as the commander of the Russian Volunteer Corps, Denis Kaputsin, spoke to reporters on the Ukrainian side of the border with Russia just one day after Moscow said it had repelled the raid on the Belgorod region. Kiev had said the attack was carried out by Russian citizens, casting it as homegrown internal Russian strife. The two groups operating in Ukraine, that's the Russian Volunteer Corps and the Freedom of Russia Legion, have claimed responsibility for that. Kaputsin said that 2 of his fighters had been lightly wounded and that the total losses on his side of operation were just 2 killed and 10 wounded. He also said the fighters had taken a Russian armored vehicle and anti-drone gun as trophies. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says the supplying F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine will be a signal that Russia will lose over its aggression, and the faster a decision is implemented on the planes, the better. Mr. Zelensky said in his nightly video address that the very first Ukrainian F-16 will be one of the strongest signals from the world that Russia will only lose because of its aggression. It will be weaker and further isolated. He adds, quote, "The main thing is the speed in training and in supply, meaning the time between decisions is real protection for our skies." Mr. Zelensky also used the video to address direct a message towards the people of Iran regarding Russia's use of Iranian-made weapons, including drones. Meanwhile, Dutch Defense Minister Kassa Ollongren has said in a letter to Parliament that the Netherlands wants to give Ukrainian pilots F-16 training as soon as possible. He added that the training will be coordinated with Belgium, Denmark and the United Kingdom, and other countries could also join. Earlier, NATO's chief Jens Stoltenberg said that training Ukrainian pilots on Western F-16 fighter jets will not make NATO a party to the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. But Norway has also said it will support efforts to teach Ukrainian pilots to fly the F-16 fighter jets. A day earlier, senior Russian diplomats said the transfer of F-16 jets to Ukraine would raise the question of NATO's role in the conflict. However, Russia's Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Rybakov said that any US-built F-16 fighter jets that were supplied to Ukraine would be a legitimate target for Moscow. U.S. Department spokesperson Matthew Miller has said the United States is deeply concerned about a meeting between a leading United Nations official for children and the Russia's Ombudsman for Children's Rights, who is wanted by the world's Permanent War Crimes Court. It comes as Maria Lvova-Belova, who is accused of the International Criminal Court's prosecutor of a war crime of deporting hundreds of Ukrainian children to Russia, said on her website last week that she held a working meeting with Virginia Gamba, the special representative of the U.S. Secretary General for Children, an armed conflict.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because yesterday when you asked me, we had seen the reports of the meeting. We had not yet confirmed it ourselves. We have now confirmed that meeting in the last 24 hours, and I will say that we are deeply concerned that a senior UN diplomat met with a fugitive subject to an ICC arrest warrant for committing war crimes against children. Such conduct undermines our shared commitment to protecting children in conflict zones. As we have said before, and Alex, this goes to, I think, the broader question you were going to ask, Russia is forcibly deporting children from Ukraine. They're denying parents and legal guardians access to those children, giving away children giving children from Ukraine Russian passports in an attempt to take away a part of their identity. Children are among the most vulnerable groups. They must be protected, especially in times of war, and we continue to call for accountability for war crimes.
NATO Chief Jens Stoltenberg has said that Ukraine will not be able to join NATO as long as the war is going on. He said the military alliance priority was to ensure that Ukraine prevails as a sovereign, independent nation. If discussions on membership are not yet on the agenda, then Mr. Stoltenberg said the alliance's next summit in the world focus on discussion, on cooperation, and on increasing the probability of weapons and systems between Ukraine and NATO.
We all agree that NATO's door is open for new members, and that it is for the NATO allies and Ukraine to decide when they should join, not Moscow. They don't have a veto. And then we also agree that the most urgent and important task now is to ensure that Ukraine prevails as a sovereign, independent nation. Because if Ukraine doesn't prevail, then there's no membership issue to discuss. But what we will do, most likely, is that we'll agree at least this program of making Ukraine even coming more closer to NATO and more interoperable with NATO.
Chinese President Xi Jinping is meeting with visiting Russian Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin in Beijing, calling for pushing pragmatic cooperation and people-to-people exchanges between China and Russia to a higher level through concerted efforts of both sides. Xi expressed his hope that both sides will continue to take advantage of the great potential, broad prospects and strong impetus of Russia-China ties to advance pragmatic cooperation. Mr. Xi said, quote, "I'm very pleased to meet Prime Minister Mishustin once again. Please convey my sincere greetings and best wishes to my old friend President Putin." This marks his first visit to China after he assumed office as Prime Minister, and he's looking forward to seeing that the both sides will continue to leverage advantages of bilateral cooperation featuring great potential, broad prospects and strong impetus so as to push cooperation between people and country and country. Mishustin is on a 2-day official visit to China at the invitation of Chinese Premier Li Qiang.